Speaking of LA, the Lakers didn't win their 7th game of the season until the turn of the year last season. This season, they've already won 7 games and we're only midway through November. Progress. The Lakers have now won 6 of their last 8 and are 2 games over 500. Max Kellerman. Is it time to take the Lake Show seriously?
Yes, the baby Lakers are for real. Now, in the NBA, what's been shown in recent years is after, I believe it's 22 games, we know the playoff seeding already. Like, look at the records after 22 games. That's what the playoff seeding is going to be. Right now, they are, 12 games in, 10 games in? And so there's a little time still for the Lakers. Let's see what happens. However, when you look at the standings and who's, right now they're ahead of the Thunder. That should not continue. But you tell me the team that's for sure going to be the 8th seed over the Lakers in the West. The Grizzlies, the Kings, the Nuggets, the T-Wolves, the Suns, the Mavericks, the Pelicans. There's no sure thing in there. Luke Walton has turned Julius Randle from a guy who looked like a bust to boom. He has Nick Young playing defense. Think about that for a second. Nick Young is playing consistent defense. D'Angelo Russell looks terrific much of the time, as does Clarkson. And, I mean, they have and by the way, this is without their number 2 draft pick really strong enough yet to assert himself in the NBA. The Lakers' future looks bright. But their present ain't bad either. They could make the playoffs in the West. I can't believe I'm saying this. They could do it this year.
A few things I wanted to point out. Number one, Julius Randle didn't look like a bust. His first year, he never played because he got injured the very first game. Last year, he came back. That was the Kobe era. So this is really, as far as I'm concerned, his first year. He's never looked like a bust. Nick Young, a.k.a. Swaggy P. But when you get yourself dimed out, caught in certain situations, and your heart gets a little broke, you kind of tend to prioritize. So he's not as distracted, per se, this year as he may have been in years past. That's something we have to take into consideration. That may have been facilitating his growth as a player on both ends of the floor. I'll tell you where will shock you, and stop the presses right here. I alluded to this weeks ago, and I will say it again. First of all, I will be at the Lakers Spurs Friday night. I'll be interested to see that game. It's going to be a big test for them, no doubt about it. I want to sit there, and I promised I was going to lay off Jim Buss. I've been very nice to that man, all right, since this season, because I'm fond of his hiring of Luke Walton. I am a fan of Luke Walton. I think this guy is a golden boy, and I think he's going to prove to be an exceptional coach in this game. I really like Luke Walton, and I love his daddy, so that don't help. Bill Walton, who doesn't love Bill Walton? But here's the deal. He's the best. But here's the deal. Luke Walton does have a 29th ranked defense, who's second to last in field goal percentage allowed, or third worst, rather, second to last in field goal percentage allowed, 3-point shooting rather allowed, and what have you. We got to pay attention to that. 5 of the next 6 games are going to tell me what I need to know about the Los Angeles Lakers, albeit this early. It's because 82-game schedule. You got the Spurs, you got the Bulls, you got 2 games, you got Oklahoma City, you got 2 games against the Golden State Warriors, who you shellacked by 20. They will remember this. And keep in mind that this is the same Lakers squad that just got blown out by Minnesota and gave up 47 to Andrew Wiggins. So let's not forget that here. We like what we're seeing from the Lakers, but it's essentially a byproduct based off of what we've seen from them the last 2 years, which was horrendous. So because of that, anything they give us that's relatively decent is something we're going to be happy about. That's what we're looking at right now.
You're right. The next half dozen games, we'll see what they're made of. They started the season, I mean, they've already beaten the Warriors this year.
That's what I said.
There's some quality wins and some quality losses.
That was the second back-to-back. Remember, the Warriors played the night before.
Still the Warriors.
Oklahoma City. I'm just
saying.
The
Warriors.
Second
they beat the Hawks.
Right.
They beat the Rockets.
That's
8-2 team, 6-4 team.
That's right.
I mean, they have some quality wins. Yeah. Even in their losses, they have usually been competitive and decided in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. The Lakers have come a long way. Now, the T-Wolves on paper look more talented, sure. But I want to talk about Julius Randle for a second. You said he never looked like a bust. I think he did. Not in terms of his skills. You could see he had skills. He could handle the ball for a big-ish guy, etc. But the way he was applying his skills made me wonder, watching him, last year especially, because he was hurt the year before, made me wonder, is he actually going to be a good NBA player, or is he going to be a player who looks good and puts up numbers but doesn't help you win?
Yeah, but
he is a good NBA player.
But I'm saying what you're wondering about you can't ignore the fact that he was coming off an injury. And because he was coming off that injury, they say it takes a year or so. So he may have been playing the way that he was playing to compensate for whatever he was physically however he physically felt he was lacking because he was coming off that injury. But also keep in mind, we have to wait and see because, again, this schedule that you've got coming up, if Luke Walton, you know, let me tell you what Luke Walton deserved the biggest credit for? Jordan Clarkson and Louis Williams off the bench. Because you got
the second unit's as good as their first unit.
I'm just saying, you got guys coming off the bench with firepower. That, to me, getting Swaggy P in the starting lineup, but getting them coming off the bench is big.
Randall, by the way, just because you can dribble doesn't mean you always should. Now he's taking it off the glass, pushing it, and getting rid of the ball.
I'm a fan of Randall.
Walton has them playing well,
I'm a fan of Randall. Randall can play.
First Take is brought to you by Audi and the $4.99 DQ Chicken Strip Basket at participating locations.
Oh, Phil Jackson, he's never been shy around a microphone, and he had some words that LeBron James found very offensive and inaccurate. The Zen Master characterized James' business associates as a posse in a recent interview with our Jackie McMullen. Here's the quote from Phil. It had to hurt when they lost LeBron. That was definitely a slap in the face, but there were a lot of little things that came out of that. When LeBron was playing with the Heat, they went to Cleveland, and he wanted to spend the night. They don't do overnights. Teams just don't. So now Spoelstra has to text Riley and say, what do I do in this situation? And Pat, who has Iron Fist rules, answers, you are on the plane. You are with this team. You can't hold up the whole team because you and your mom and your posse want to spend an extra night in Cleveland. LeBron, how do you feel about Phil's comments?
To use that label, and if you go and read the definition of what the word posse is, it's not what I've built over my career. It's not what I stand for. It's not what my family stands for. And I believe the only reason he used that word because we see young African Americans trying to make a difference. We see the success that we had, but then there's always someone that lets you know how far we still have to go as African Americans. You know, and I just don't believe that Phil Jackson would have used that same term if he was doing business with someone else. You know, you know, working with another team, or if he was working with anybody in sports that was owning a team that wasn't African American and that had a group of guys around him that he didn't agree with what they did, I don't think he would have called him a posse. I had nothing but respect for him as a coach, for what he was able to do, obviously, at the helm of one of my favorite player of all time, MJ, and also been there growing up and watching with the Lakers, but I got nothing for him.
You said you had respect for him up until...
Stephen A., talk to me.
First of all, LeBron James is 1,000% correct. He said he had respect for Phil Jackson. Evidently, he's lost it. Phil Jackson deserves a diminished level of respect this morning. Let's be clear. Phil Jackson is not a racist. Let's get that out the way. MJ would attest to that. Kobe Bryant would attest to that. Shaquille O'Neal would attest to that, et cetera, et cetera. He's no bigot. He's as progressive as they come. But Phil Jackson needs to appreciate the fact that at least when the word bigotry comes up, he did come across as a bit that way. Because we saw our president-elect, whether it was at a restaurant or wherever he was, with a bunch of people the other day. They weren't called the posse. I certainly haven't heard Phil Jackson alluding to anybody, any white ball players as having a posse. When Rachel Nichols, he did an exceptional job of highlighting and articulating on Twitter what Phil had written in his book.
Amen.
He alluded to what he thought LeBron was, but he also said, we shall see. Well, what have we seen since Phil wrote that book? We've seen LeBron capture 3 championships. We've seen him go to 3 consecutive NBA finals. We see himself in peak condition. We see him going out there, despite being the richest player in the NBA, playing like he's broke. We see a 31-year-old individual who has rebuilt downtown Cleveland, not once, but twice, whose philanthropy can't be questioned, who's facilitating thousands of kids receiving an education and beyond because of the millions upon millions of dollars he, through his foundation, have poured into those efforts. This man is the quintessential iconic sports role model that we have seen maybe ever. And for Phil Jackson to talk about him and a crew of individuals the way that they do, I take offense to that. Let me be very, very clear. LeBron is another player to me, as great as he is. In terms of personal relationships, I'm tight with many, many other players, more so than I am with LeBron James. But I respect the hell out of him as a man, as a brother, as an athlete, as a superstar. And the profound respect that I have for him is equal to that I have of his boys. I know Rich Paul. I know Maverick Carter. I know his boy Randy. Good brothers who work their tails off, who take offense to this kind of label because they understood the importance at a very, very early period that you can't be about being a hanger-on. LeBron James ain't about that. He wants to give you an opportunity, but it's up to you to kick the door down and to elevate yourself to another level. They have done that in their respective chosen fields. They should be commended for it. And for Phil, Max, to allude to that, to them in that way, was highly, highly disrespectful, especially since it's nothing that he's ever said about MJ. It's nothing that he ever said about Kobe. Why on earth would you try to say it about LeBron James? I don't blame LeBron James for being offended.
Neither do I, but I'm going to defend Phil Jackson a little bit here. And I realize when a white dude on TV defends the white coach who says something racially insensitive about the black player, it can easily be perceived as, of course, because, you know, if you didn't live through the struggle, or if you don't live through the struggle, you don't identify with it, and you're going to try to brush it off as not a big deal. I think that these things become big deals partly because it's baked into the system. So LeBron James uses this moment as a teaching moment. I thought it was really well done by LeBron James because people should be aware that sometimes the language they use, particularly groups that have not been, you know, persecuted groups, and Phil Jackson belongs to one of those groups, they should be aware that the language they use sometimes reflects, even if it's unconscious bias or unconscious feelings that they would be better off without. It does reflect that at times, and LeBron James used the moment to point it out. But we're here, and the sports media is here selling, you know, the products we sell during the commercials. And if we think that an issue can get people to watch, we will exploit that issue. And on Twitter, it'll be clickbait, etc. So a good teaching moment that LeBron is using here with Phil Jackson turns Phil Jackson into a villain out of proportion with the actual crime he committed. What was that crime? Lazy thinking, I think, is really the crime that Phil Jackson committed here. Not just maybe using the word posse to describe young African-American, especially successful African-Americans in this case, because, you know, in boxing we call it an entourage, and that's generalizing. We know that entourages frequently are filled with hangers-on. You pointed out very well, I think, why that's not the case with LeBron, because LeBron gives his, you know, people an opportunity, but then they have to make the most of it. So the people you see around LeBron have been selected out. It's like an evolutionary process. Either you contribute or you're not there. But how else is it lazy? I want to mention this because it relates to that idea. Maverick Carter in particular, I want to point out, is an extraordinary person. What are the odds that someone who played on the same high school basketball team as LeBron would be given the chance and then becomes a mogul in his own right, and then doesn't just take the opportunity and does okay, but does exponentially better than anyone could have imagined? That not only is LeBron a 1 in a billion guy, but he surrounds him, but the guy he played on the same team with is a 1 in a million guy. So it's general and lazy in that from that point of view of Phil to use the word posse, but to apply it to the people around LeBron, particularly Maverick Carter, is in a way it points out how extraordinary Maverick Carter is, because in Phil Jackson's experience, the entourage, or posse as he calls it, around players in a predominantly African-American league has been to entitle those players in a way that he feels is counterproductive. And I think that's legitimate. It's just lazy to apply it to LeBron.
With all due respect, I think you're letting Phil Jackson off the hook. Now, you are as sensitive and as decent as they come. In no way am I questioning you in terms of how heartfelt you feel and how sincere you are, particularly to a myriad of causes that affect the African-American community. I want to say that. But if I'm correct, you are Jewish, right?
Correct.
Max Kellerman, does a black person or a white person get to define what is offensive to you as a Jewish person?
I don't think anyone gets to define what's offensive to anyone else.
No, what I'm saying to you is that as a Jewish person, if somebody says something that you deem anti-Semitic, It's not for me to question that. It's for me to be informed by someone who is Jewish, enlightened,
Sure.
and then as a result, I'm able to say, okay, you would know, I wouldn't, because I'm not Jewish. I'm saying here, LeBron James is the black man, okay? He is the one that is standing front and center, feeling the words that Phil Jackson said. Now, you got to understand something, Max Kellerman, because it's very, very important here. Black folks in America, let's be very, very clear. On many, many occasions, we feel undervalued, underestimated, marginalized. My man Joe Madison was talking about that this morning on Sirius XM on Urban View. Those are three things that black folks not only feel consistently, but religiously and methodically go about their lives of working against. I am saying to you, Max Kellerman, Phil Jackson, who has 11 championships, riding the coattails of Michael Jordan. Let's call it what it is. Phil Jackson didn't invent the triangle. That was Tex Winter. He riding the coattails of Michael Jordan with Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman, riding the coattails of Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, okay? Phil Jackson has 11 rings, all right? Because of African Americans, he coached. I ain't even bring up the ones he played with in New York City in 1973, the last time the Knicks won a championship. Okay, this man has been around enough black people. He has been sensitive enough to his credit to enough black causes. This man is well read. He's well informed. He knows better. So when you sit up there and say it was lazy, when it comes to reading, when it comes to experiencing, when it comes to enlightening and educating yourself about what people different than you may feel, Phil Jackson is not lazy, which means that if he wasn't lazy, he intentionally said that. I am not letting him off the hook on that.
All that assumes
Not one
that
bit.
he wouldn't have used the word posse with a white player and his hangers-on, although in LeBron's case, they're not hangers-on. And that may be true. Difficult to prove, but I wouldn't argue against that too hard.
Okay.
That may be true.
I haven't heard him do it.
Which is why the crime here is insensitivity or laziness and... Well, go ahead.
There's one other thing. He also misrepresented the story, and Rachel Nichols enlightened us on this, in that LeBron wanted to hang out a night. The game was Wednesday in Cleveland, and then Friday they're going to Toronto, and he made it seem like LeBron just said, hold up the plane, I want to hang out with my family and my posse, when he had invited the whole team over his house for Thanksgiving rather than spending a random holiday.
And he also went a step further.
Misrepresenting the narrative of what LeBron was trying to do, making him look like a bad guy.
But he also went a step further, because it implied that he was a prima donna athlete who expects special treatment, when, by the way, he knows that certain guys deserve it.
Right, but that, I think, is actually a function of LeBron not playing for Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson's always done this to opponents. He tries to undermine them with statements in the press. He's always done that. In terms of the sensitivity, as I said, LeBron has an absolute right to feel that way. I think he's right about it. My own judgment is he's right about it. And he used it as a teaching moment. Right. And I started by saying that was a good thing.
Phil Jackson, right now, needs to come out and apologize to LeBron James. The NBA is better because of LeBron James. LeBron James has honored the NBA brand just as much, if not more, than Phil has. He should come out, man up, and apologize to LeBron James right now.
Whether or not LeBron wants one, by the way.
Right.
On that note, can you guys head over to Twitter, weigh in here. Should Phil Jackson publicly apologize to LeBron and company? We'll share those results a little later in the show. We want to hear your thoughts on that. But coming up next.
58 seconds left, and all they need is a field goal. They're trying to knock off number 2. On the way, and good. And it is stunned disbelief inside Death Valley. The Pitt Panthers have rocked Clemson's world and shaken up all of college football.
Keith Duncan for a walk-off winner.
Right through, and the Hawkeyes have stunned the Wolverines. Michigan unbeaten no more. Loops it in the back of the end zone. What a catch! Imator Bebe, touchdown USC. Oh, and it's picked off. And that might send the folks home here in Seattle.
You don't have your fastball going each week, you're going to get knocked off.
So good. A crazy Saturday filled with upsets led to a little reshuffling of the college football playoff rankings. So here's the latest, folks. Ohio State benefited the most with a win over Maryland. The Buckeyes moved up from 5th to 2nd. Michigan, losers on the road against Iowa, fared the best of the fallen as they remained at number 3. Clemson, which lost at home to unranked Pitt, dropped from number 2 to number 4, while Washington's home loss to USC cost the Huskies 2 spots, going from 4th to 6th. putting them outside of a playoff bowl. And then Louisville has to deal with a one-spot move, going from 6 to number 5 after pulling out a win over Wake Forest. Stephen A., any issues with those rankings?
Not at all. Alabama should be number 1, Roll Tide. They're the best team in the nation. They have the best coach in the nation. They will steamroll, as I predicted it earlier this year when Max Kellerman was willing to take the field and I was willing to take Alabama.
Come on, Lamar Jackson.
I have stayed right there, and I'm not budging. Alabama will roll. Roll Tide. Having said all of that, they've destroyed the SEC. Nobody in the SEC is even relevant in our eyes because of what Alabama continues to do to everybody. Tennessee, Texas A&M, LSU, just to mention a few. Leonard Fournette gets held to 35 yards rushing. I mean, my God, Alabama, Roll Tide. So we look at that, and the SEC has been irrelevant, which is a story that we should visit another day because Nick Saban has ruined the SEC conference, which was the best conference for years.
Yeah.
Now it's the Big Ten. And because it's the Big Ten, that's why I don't have a problem with Ohio State and Michigan being up in there. I know Penn State beat Ohio State, and everybody caught up in the sauce talking about Penn State. You know, if they win the Big Ten and Ohio State, even if Ohio State gets in, they should be in. Oh, stop it. They're not on Ohio State's level. They lucked up 1 week. Damn it, that's that. Having said all of that, Clemson being that 4th team, I know that they beat Louisville. I know my man Max Kellerman wants to see Lamar Jackson. But damn it, they didn't get it done. And Louisville right now, as we look at them in terms of strength of schedule from this point forward, they're like 43rd. They had their opportunities. They didn't look impressive in a variety of wins after a loss to Clemson. I've got no problems with the top 4 whatsoever. Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, and Clemson.
As I so often do, Stephen A. Smith, I'm going to use your own logic against you.
Sure.
So looking forward is affecting how you're ranking these teams now. How is Louisville going to overcome based on their strength of schedule and make it into the top 4?
No, I just threw it out there because I know you like to use your stats, so I want to beat you to it.
Okay, well.
Go ahead, but it doesn't matter.
Looking forward, Ohio State, Michigan playing at the end of the season. Someone going to lose that game. They can't be in the top 4, right? You can't be in the top 4 with 2 losses.
Depends. Well,
no, the loser of that game ain't going to the playoff.
Okay.
Okay, so.
What if Louisville loses it?
So, well, let's start here. So we have Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, Clemson 4. My problem is Ohio State or Michigan, one or the other ain't going to be there. That opens up a spot. And I've argued for Washington last week.
Did you?
Yeah, Louisville.
I don't recall you arguing. I thought that was me. No. I thought that was me talking about Washington.
I said Pac-12, and you were dismissing them because of a loss to USC. Now, Louisville versus Clemson. This is a paradox. To rank Clemson over Louisville is a paradox. A paradox is like if you said, no one at this desk is capable of telling the truth. If that statement were true, then it couldn't be true because you'd be telling the truth. That's a paradox. That's right. Think about it. Now, how can Clemson be ranked ahead of Louisville? They just lost to Pitt. If you believe Clemson is better than Louisville, then you also must believe that a close Louisville loss that could have gone either way on the road to Clemson is not as bad as a loss to Pitt at home, if you believe Clemson should be ranked over Louisville. So if you believe Clemson should be ranked over Louisville, you cannot have Clemson over Louisville. Paradox. So therefore, my top 4. Alabama, at least a standard deviation better than the rest of college football. Okay. Let's call it what it is at this moment and so far.
Go ahead.
Either, make up your mind, Ohio State or Michigan. Let's go with Ohio State for now. Louisville, and I think ultimately Washington.
I think I kind of could have helped our Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton in this regard when it came to the debates, Max Kellerman. The art of debate is first making sure that people understand what the hell you're saying in order for you to win it. It shouldn't have to look up the words, shouldn't have to look up the phrases, shouldn't have to have a thesaurus and a dictionary next to them to try to figure out what the hell you're saying, okay? I'm talking about right now, as the rankings stand today, the 4 teams who are in it, I have no issue. Now, of course, Ohio State or Michigan is going to lose. And when that happens, if Louisville wins and runs the table and Clemson wins and Alabama wins, we might have a decision made. Sure, we can talk about it then. But I'm sorry, Molly, wasn't your question about right now? The ratings as we speak today. Louisville lost to Clemson. Ohio State is still better. Michigan State is still perceived as being better.
Clemson lost to Pitt at home.
Excuse me. But Clemson beat Louisville. That's what I'm saying.
But by your own logic, that should make if you like Clemson so much, that's a better loss than losing at home to Pitt.
What I'm saying to you is that Clemson beat Louisville. So Clemson should certainly be in ahead of Louisville. Come to me in a couple of weeks when Ohio State and Michigan play one another. Let's see how they look. Let's see how Louisville. What if Louisville goes out and looks like straight garbage, even in a win? But Michigan and Ohio State is a nail biter with some bogus call from an official or something like that.
Clemson should be ahead of Louisville, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is it better? What's a better loss? If you lose to Clemson on the road or Pitt at home? What's a better loss?
If you lose to Clemson
on the road.
Clemson on the road.
Or Pitt at home.
It's a worse loss for Clemson to lose to Pitt at home. I understand that.
Good.
But what I'm saying,
they each have one loss, correct?
What I'm saying to you is this: I am not. In the case of Clemson and Louisville, I don't believe Penn State is on Ohio State's level. I just think they looked up that week. But in the case of Clemson and Louisville, I think they're relatively even, but Clemson beat them. I'm giving their victory over Louisville more of an edge. I can be arbitrary like that.
Kids.
Paradox.
Yeah, we got to look it up.
Someone who does two things. Word of the day. I have it right here for you.
I appreciate
Use
that.
it in a sentence later.
Listen.
We're all expanding our
Nobody
vocabulary.
exemplifies the word paradox more than my man Spock Kellerman. Nobody.
Listen. I never had the opportunity for Ivy League education, so I appreciate it rubbing off. Coming up, Stephen A., you always say no one loves Tony Romo more than Jerry Jones. Well, Jerry, was he being a little insensitive yesterday when discussing Tony Romo's paycheck as a backup? Take a listen. We'll react after the break.
I've paid a lot of money for a backup quarterback, as you well know. And this, by the way, as it turns out, is going to be the record for having paid this for the backup quarterback. You've always had to have the use of another quarterback at some point during the season. You don't want that. And you're dealing with a very young, healthy, strong quarterback and Dak Prescott. But, that's the reason you have backup quarterbacks. I've paid a lot of money for a backup quarterback, as you well know. And this, by the way, as it turns out, is going to be the record for having paid this for the backup quarterback.
Paycheck jokes. I don't know. I was raised to never talk about somebody else's money, but what do you think? Insensitive?
Well, first of all, in the interest of fairness, because I want to be fair, Jerry Jones did make those comments before Tony Romo's, dare I say, emotional speech reading, scenario with the media and the public. So I want to be sensitive. I would say that I was a bit more sensitive than Jerry Jones. I mean, when you think about it, Jerry Jones is smiling, and he has suffered a lot. There is no doubt about that. And I think that we see a situation right now where where Jerry Jones is so happy. The Cowboys are winning. Not only is he making money because they're worth over $4 billion, not only is he making money, but finally, it's actually justified because it's not hype that has the Dallas Cowboys, really leading the news wires and the airways and all that stuff. It's their actual productivity on the field for only the second time in 20 years, as far as I'm concerned. So I look at it from that perspective, and I understand how Jerry Jones is so happy. I'm just saying that I was a little taken aback because it is his adopted son we're talking about here, Tony Romo. I imagine that if Tony Romo showed his emotion to us, he clearly showed it to Jerry. And knowing that, I would expect Jerry to be a little bit sensitive, but Jerry Jones reminded us all of the business extraordinaire that he is, and that business takes precedence over personal feelings. Damn it, I'm paying you the paycheck. You're still going to go to your house, your mansion, and somewhere in Texas, all right? You're still going to wear the uniform for the rest of the year. You're going to get paid. Everything's good. But damn it, I'm moving on. That's what Jerry Jones is basically saying, and I understand.
Stephen A., Molly, Damian, I think Jerry Jones has handled this situation perfectly from the get-go. He made a calculation, which was, look, I'd love for the Cowboys to be like 8-1 by the time Tony Romo comes back. Probably not going to happen. Let me support Tony Romo because we're going to need him eventually. When he gets healthy, it's going to be his team again. But you know what? If we are like 8-1, that's a good problem to have. May I have the problem, please, that I have to sit there looking like a little bit of a hypocrite about, like coming back off my Tony Romo comments and now throwing my support off Dak. Like, may I please have those problems, oh football gods? And he got them. I mean, it was unlikely. I don't care how good you are. It's unlikely that any team is ever 8-1, after 9 games. But there they are. So he supported Romo the whole time. Then they even kind of delayed. Is Romo healthy? Is he? Oh, my Dak Prescott's hurt. His Dak Prescott keeps acting up. And eventually it's like, look, the guy is ready to play. He's practicing. He's throwing the ball well, everything. Is he gonna play or not? And when it was time to cross that bridge, Jerry Jones was like, well, I guess I got the problem I wanted. Nope, he ain't playing because that's not how it works in the NFL. If you're 8-1 and the kid's playing well, he will continue to play. I don't know how much better Jerry Jones could have played this whole thing.
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Didn't I tell you last week? I told you last week about how this Cowboys situation. You swore up and down on the camera last week. Jerry Jones can't help himself. He's going to put Tony Romo back in there. And look what's happening. Look what's happening. Jerry Jones got it made right now. Got Dak Prescott. Yeah. We can go back and check the tape because you were the main one talking about, Jerry Jones can't help himself, and he's going to throw Tony Romo back in the mix. And look what's happening now. But when we talk about this Cowboys situation, I had a similar situation in New England.
Okay.
When Tom Brady, when Drew Bledsoe got hurt against the Jets, Tom Brady comes in. Obviously, the whole situation played itself out. And guess what? Tom Brady got hurt in the AFC Championship game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And who came in to save the day? Drew Bledsoe. So that's why this whole situation is beautiful, because anyone who's watched the Dallas Cowboys over the years, especially the past couple of years when Tony Romo's been hurt, they've just been abominable at the quarterback position. They haven't been able to do what a backup quarterback is supposed to do, and that's hold down the fort until the starter gets back. So if you're Jerry Jones right now, you got your feet kicked up, you drinking lemonade, knowing that I got a rookie baller right now, a 4th-round draft pick, I believe, that's carried this team to 8-1, that's playing at an elite level, and my backup is an elite quarterback that's going that can hold it down.
He addressed me, man.
They can hold it down.
Damian Woody, when I spoke last week, you're absolutely right. I said exactly what you said I said, but I didn't stop there. You see, this is the beauty of being a journalist as opposed to a football player. See, you know your football. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay.
But I know how to record.
Okay.
The expertise of football players. It's part of the job I had. And I also know how to record myself. I specifically said this season, not this week. My point is they got 7 games to go. Baltimore's next. Washington's after that. You got road games with Minnesota and the Giants. You got Tampa Bay, Detroit, and Philadelphia. Now, the last game is January 1st. That's the new year.
Okay.
That means I got till the new year until you can say the statements that you just stated. Because the fact of the matter is I never said to you, oh, that's next week. I said to you, trust you me, Jerry Jones can't help himself. You better believe you're going to see Tony Romo again this year. That is what I said.
Okay.
So you tried to sit up there very adroitly, I might add, elocuted yourself very, very nicely. You didn't try to sit up there and confuse me, force me to need a dictionary like Max does. You were very, very direct and to the point. But in the end, you basically misquoted me because I got until the new year. Am I right, Molly Wood?
You do.
I got until the new year.
He thinks he can still get in.
It's January. It's November, bro.
But guess what? I'm gonna be here every week.
I understand that. But don't act like I said it now.
So every week, I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna look you right in the eye, and I'm gonna count it down.
And I'm gonna count it down for both of y'all, because you don't listen. You're hard-headed too. Max, you know better than you're probably contaminated than Max. You probably, this is your fault. You probably did it. It don't matter because I see what's happening. You have been huddling. You huddle with the researcher. You huddle with Molly Wood. You huddle with the NFL aficionados and what you do. You mingle with them, all right? And y'all conspire against me. But I'm up for it. I'm up for it. You will see Tony Romo again.
You are so full of it. We've never huddled.
Please.
You are so full of it. Way to switch the narrative like Phil
Not only do I not huddle with anyone, but I would like a recount of that election the other day when you won 51-49. I believe I won the popular vote. That's beside the point.
Don't matter. I got electorals.
I want to just say that I'm glad that you, Damian Woody, and Jerry Jones obviously watches First Take, and everyone else in the world has finally come around to my way of thinking. What I said weeks and weeks and weeks ago is the issue for the Dallas Cowboys was last year and has been in recent years the lack of a real backup quarterback. And what Dak Prescott means for them is they finally found their backup quarterback. The only thing that's throwing people is it's not the guy they thought it would be. The backup is Romo. Not going to be next year because he's owed too much money to save the money on the salary cap when they cut him in June, which will surely happen. But until then, they got a guy sitting on the bench where if the starter gets hurt or collapses in terms of productivity, they can bring a guy in off the bench and succeed. And just because his identity is different than you thought it was, just because it's Tony Romo who's the backup, don't let that throw you. I've been saying this for weeks, and I'm glad that you and Jerry Jones and others are coming around to my way of thinking.
What? Go ahead, man. I'm going to give you the last word, maybe. Hurry up.
I'm just glad. It's really about time that you guys start listening to me because I come on this show and I preach the football gospel on the show. But y'all been resisting what I've been trying to say, what I've been trying to tell you.
Because I don't trust you.
Thank you for the good word.
I don't trust you.
But you know what?
I'll be honest with you.
I heard it from Max. I think it was like last week or 2 weeks ago when you basically said what I said. So I'm like, okay, now I know we vibing. Yeah. Now I'm starting to get it from you. So now you're starting to understand.
I've been messing with you for years, and I'm gonna keep messing with you. I ain't gonna never stop. That's number one. Number two, here's the deal. In the end, while we're on the subject, you see, the problem is you a problem. Because you have changed your stripes. You know, you sliding over to the Cowboys. You're a former Patriot. Do you know this man said Tom Brady's going to fall off a cliff 14 months from now? Do you realize that? About 14 months from now. He said Tom Brady's going to fall off a cliff. He's going to literally be garbage in 14 months. That's what he says. And you find yourself agreeing with him and siding about the Cowboys? You should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself.
There's no agreeing when you making the initial points. You guys are following me.
Let's admit this. He has a wealth of football information. There's no two ways about that.
Yes, he gave us the good word.
Spot Kellerman, we appreciate your adage.
All right.
Thank you.